everybody. Welcome to iCast Guidance, your weekly Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPG podcast, where every week, Rich, Garret, and I pick up a subject around the culture of gaming and discuss it with you. So, without further ado, sharpen up those daggers. We're going to get started right now. Gentlemen, I would like to say that this studio is freaking cold, like beyond freaking cold.
Yeah. Yep, I may have frostbite.
If we're going to add to our link tree, our Amazon wish list, I would like space heaters, please. Somebody spends, it's fucking freezing.
Please help us out.
Oh my God.
It's, I'm okay. My feet
I'm glad you're okay,
My
Garret.
feet are a little chilly, but
So I'm just going to put this out there for our listeners. Our Three Ducks Tavern studio exists in the basement of an 1800s general store. So we have a historic building and we're down in the basement because the stone walls that you see, if you go over to our YouTube channel and you see the stone walls behind us, those are real. And it's fucking cold in here.
It's the price we pay for the aura, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, my God, my feet are numb by the time I go upstairs. Anyway, good morning, everybody. How we doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Looking forward to today's conversation.
I know it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Let's do a couple of listener comments this time around because Rabbit.com was chiming in and we always appreciate Rabbit's commentary. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because this one's long. You go over to YouTube, you can check out this comment underneath last week's iCast Guidance episode. But Rabbit does mention, we were talking about why we play these games last week in our episode. And Rabbit says play is how we learn about ourselves and our environment. I'll never understand why so many feel that once you become an adult, you have to stop playing. Role-playing was actually used as a therapy tool way back in the day in psychology. And I'm like, yeah, actually, okay, we were kind of talking about that a little bit. And then he goes on to say, for me, being a gamer is more than just playing. It's an entire philosophy about being curious, interested in learning about others, ourselves, different things we may do or how we'd react in different situations, and being open to understanding more about ourselves and adapting and becoming someone we like more through that understanding. And I thought, well, there it is. That sums it up beautifully.
That was poetic.
Right?
Rabbit, I think, fits our vibe perfectly.
I do. I love that. I always look forward to coming to these comments and reading them.
Yeah.
So Rabbit, thanks for that. I really appreciate that. It's kind of like the icing on the cake at the end of the episode. So
yeah, I don't think that could have been said any better.
Agreed.
That was great.
That's why we do it, baby.
Yeah.
Then we got one other comment from Open World Addict Zero, who is saying, is there any way for you to record any of these podcasts live? I would love to see the conversation while on camera. And okay, so you hit it on the head there. Number one, we do record these, but we have not gone live with those yet. And we're working on that. Our Rising session, Rising is the name of season 2 of our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which we go live on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. You can actually watch us play. Now, we only do that on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. So it's every other, essentially. But yeah, you can check us out there. As for our podcast and going live on the podcast, we are going to do that. I'm going to try and get that scheduled for next week if possible.
Yes. So be there or be square.
Yes, it is coming. It is coming. So that would be on January 19th approximately. And we do record early. So if you're listening to this, we record this on Sunday mornings at usually somewhere around 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I think a safe time to schedule the live broadcast would be 9:30. So look for us next Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Sunday Eastern Standard Time. And we should be going live on YouTube. I'll get that set up.
Hell yeah.
So
exciting stuff.
See us taking our comments and treating them like they should be treated. It's like somebody wants us live. Fine. Let's go live.
Let's do it.
All right. That was good. So today's episode, we're talking about monsters.
Ooh, spooky monsters.
Yes, spooky monsters. Well, this is a thing that we introduced this idea for a topic, or you did, Garret. And then we were like, yeah, cool, monsters. But we never really talked about how we were going to approach this. And so I'm kind of thinking we're coming to table with like, I'm going to take a challenge rating 1, a challenge rating 10, and a challenge rating 20 plus. And come to the table with one of each of those. But what did we wind up doing here?
Honestly, I wound up picking just my favorites that I love to talk about, that I think are unique, that I think are well designed and fun.
I kind of, I mean, I got a mishmash of a little bit of everything. Mainly a lot of like really high level, strong creatures, monsters, which made me really, really, we've talked about this in the past, is creating this like, battle dome thing, whatever.
The arena fight that we're going to do.
That's it, right? It makes me want to fight these things.
Yeah.
Like just looking into the abilities that some of these things have, it's like, I want to create a level 20 character and try to fight this.
Yeah. Or as Rich was saying, fight as these things.
Fight as these things.
I want to be Orcus.
Like
I want
kaiju fights. Dude.
Yeah. I want to be Tiamat.
Well, I think a Tarrasque would beat Tiamat.
I think we should move on.
I don't think so.
You think a Tarrasque would beat Tiamat?
Let's move on.
No, I think this is a good conversation, but we can move on.
Who's starting us off?
All right. So I came at this from the standpoint, there's a lot of, there's so much material out there on like, oh, what's the most badass monster to put in your combat? Who's going to beat whom? We talk about this a lot. And as a DM, I'm kind of, I've seen a lot of that stuff. So I came at this from the standpoint of lore and storytelling with monsters and what I found to be the most interesting in terms of how they behave, how they act, what the histories are behind them. So mine come at it from a little bit different perspective. So who do you want to start off?
Why don't you start us off, Todd?
Yeah, why don't you bring one in?
No. Okay. Well, I think for the first half of the show, why don't we do our larger, longer format ones?
Okay.
And then in the second half of the show, I think we should bring in a smattering of smaller ones.
Yeah.
That might make the conversation interesting.
I like that.
All right. So I'll start us off. And for mine, I can't help but go to the dragon turtle. So the dragon turtle for me is obviously he's, pretty high challenge rating. He's a challenge rating of 17. He's got an armor class of 20 and average hit points around 341. So this makes him a really serious opponent. However, you have to remember, first of all, like if we had a little description of the dragon turtle straight from the monster manual, dragon turtles are amongst the most fearsome creatures of the oceans. As large and voracious as the oldest of its land-based dragon kin, a dragon turtle strikes with its deadly jaws, steaming breath, and crushing tails. And here's something interesting, and this is where I'm going to get into the lore. Another quote. A dragon turtle's rough shell is the same dark green color as the deep water where the monster dwells. Silver highlights lining the shell resemble light dancing on open water, and a surfacing dragon turtle is sometimes mistaken for the reflection of the sun or moon on the waves. Okay.
That's awesome.
It gets so much better. And I'm going to just kind of throw it out there. The Wizards of the Coast is borrowing from a mythological creature from the physiologists called the Aspidoshalone. Aspidoshalone is a creature, an entity throughout the history and lore of mythology for centuries across multiple cultures. And it's one of the most interesting creatures. I've always loved it ever since I was a kid. And it is this. Aspidoshalone is a giant turtle. And when Aspidoshalone surfaces, it's a trap. He is as large as a small island, and his back has beaches and rocks and trees that physically grow on it. So that when he surfaces in the ocean, sailors mistake him for an island. And of course, they've been at sea for months, so they want to take refuge. So they park on the island, they unload, and they make a campfire. And when Aspidoshalone feels the campfire on his back, he rolls over, drowns the sailors, and devours them.
That's amazing.
It's fucking incredible.
I have never heard of an evil dragon turtle.
Well,
I've only heard of peaceful ones.
Peaceful dragon turtles?
Yeah, like if we're going to think about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there it is again. And it comes from, this is the thing, is this entity has existed in numerous forms. It has existed as fish, it has existed as lobsters, it has existed as whales. And depending on the culture, the religious background, I mean, you have everybody from Pliny the Elder, the medieval philosopher, to what was the saint's name? Please hold, I have to find it. There is a saint, Saint Brendan. He's an Irish saint. Saint Brendan talked about his version of it called Jasconius. You also have a reference to it in J.R.R. Tolkien called the Fastidicalon, which is a poem, but it's about a similar creature. Jorge Luis Borges, the South American writer, massively popular fiction and poetry writer, has a version of it called, what was his name? Not Sarah, it's Zaratan. Zaratan relates to Satan. There are so many versions of the dragon turtle throughout history. I freaking love this thing.
So it makes you wonder, right? How did all these different cultures get a similar creature?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
Because they existed.
Because they really
existed.
That's what oh my God, you guys are on the same page as me.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe. Now, let's think about this for a minute. Before we get, let's apply a little bit more logic. Before we say, oh yeah, bullshit.
Before we get crazy.
Before we get crazy, let's say, if they existed, why is there no proof? Well, because if they existed in the Atlantic Ocean, isn't the Mariana Trench in the Atlantic Ocean, or is that the Pacific Ocean?
Haven't we only explored like 5% of our ocean?
We don't know anything about the ocean.
That's what I'm saying. The bones of this thing could be on the bottom of the deepest part of the sea. It could be an island-size turtle.
Yeah, they could be like connected with the actual Earth itself,
or
with the
if
shelf.
if they've died, they've, like what Rich just said, they're on the bottom and they just look like the bottom.
Right. Yeah. Or
their shells have just turned into
the bottom of the ocean.
The bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And we may never realize that. It's entirely possible that these things have existed.
And I love staying in the camp of, we don't know everything, and just accepting that. Like, I feel the same way with dragons. Why does every culture on the earth have their own version of a dragon?
Well, there's a theory about that. There's a theory about why is that the theory states that dragons also could have existed, but because they were avian creatures, their bones would be similar to avian bones, which are lightweight and hollow, and therefore would deteriorate without leaving fossils.
I think it's very plausible that they're real.
I had no idea. Todd bringing up all these different either religious things or whatever. Each culture has their own thing. I had no idea on that, on the dragon turtle.
Yeah,
I totally believe that they're real. No.
I know. I mean, I'm reading.
You got me.
I'm reading from Wikipedia right now. So this, I'll totally admit that I'm reading this part from Wikipedia.
Yeah, sourcing Wikipedia.
But Korha is a version of this turtle, and in the Babylonian Talmud, Rabba Barbar Hana states, once we were traveling on a ship and we saw a certain fish upon which sand had settled and grass grew on it. We assumed that it was a dry land and went up to it and baked and cooked on the back of the fish. But when its back grew hot, it turned over. And were it not for the fact that the ship was close by, we would have drowned. This monster is called Korha in a poem by Jewish scholar Samuel ibn Nagrilla. There's another story that's identical, right? From a completely different culture and a completely different time. That was 73 AD. The physiologist was also 2nd century. That's a couple hundred years after, or 100 years after the fact, but still different location.
Okay. So I don't want this to turn into like a conspiracy theorist podcast. So maybe we bring it to the realm of, okay, why do you like to bring these into your campaign?
Yeah. Okay. That's actually a really good point, because I think that when we I'm glad you brought that up. When we just bring monsters into our campaign for the sake of battle, for the sake of wearing down our characters, and we talk about this on this podcast all the time, is how does the action contribute to the narrative? So we dealt with this with travel, right? Like, how can little events in travel lead to, supporting the narrative? I believe, of course, the monsters should be properly placed in any given world. Obviously, we shouldn't have frost giants in Chult.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't make any sense. But if you have some kind of lore and history to the creature and it's properly placed, you now have an enhanced, robust, and sensible story.
Well, I think that, as well as in your D&D campaign, people of the world can talk about dragon turtles the same way we just talked about them now.
Well, yeah, in that there is no proof that they exist. Some people believe in them. Some people don't.
And they're so large, and maybe like cities are built atop them. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine if that was an ancient dragon turtle's master plan, was to just be patient because he's extra hungry? Maybe time moves slower for the dragon turtle. And so he can lay in wait in dormancy while an entire civilization forms on his back. And then in one fell swoop, he has Thanksgiving dinner.
That is a genius campaign idea.
Well,
right?
I mean, going back to our Kraken Week campaign, we were on the back of a dragon turtle, were we not?
Mm-hmm. We were.
That's what Addie,
Yep.
came up with.
Right.
It's a plausible thing to do. I like the idea.
Now let's talk about like fighting a dragon turtle.
Well, fighting a dragon turtle, like if we just go with straight up stats, the dragon turtle is absolutely a beast. We're talking a strength of 25. We're talking a constitution of 20, 341 hit points. You got a multi-attack, right? It makes 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. And these are both plus 13 to hit, even though I find the damage to be a little bit unreasonably low.
Yeah, I was looking at the stat block while you were talking a minute ago.
Yeah.
You think we can fight him?
But
I think we could fight him.
the steam breath weapon is pretty intense.
Yeah, but the only problem with the steam breath weapon for me on the dragon turtle is this. The steam is in a 60-foot cone, which seems like it's in line with other large creatures, but a gargantuan dragon turtle, like in the illustration alone, is the size of a schooner. That schooner is going to be 300 feet long. You're going to tell me that this turtle can only produce a 60-foot cone of steam breath?
Weird.
Yeah. Scale-wise, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Of course, if it was a 300-foot cone, he'd wipe out the whole ship in one shot.
That'd be so cool.
So I guess they're trying to balance it a little bit.
I guess.
But listen, I don't want to make the whole podcast about the dragon turtle. Let's move to your guys. Like, what do you guys have?
I am going to be taking mine because I'm pretty well versed. One might say an expert in the Spelljammer setting. I particularly enjoy some of the monster that they created specifically for this setting. And I'm going to be talking about my favorite at the moment, which is a Feyr. It's actually pronounced fear, but it's spelled F-E-Y-R. So a Feyr is a tentacled horror that feeds quietly on strong emotions. To minimize the chance of harm to itself, it prefers to devour the nightmares of other creatures while they sleep. Feyrs shun bright light, but aren't harmed by it. Consequentially, they are as much at home in the void of wild space as they are in the dark alleys and dungeons. A Feyr that comes across a spelljamming ship tries to enter the ship's air envelope and stow away, remaining secluded and invisible until it finds a sleeping victim it can attack. It retreats rather than allow itself to perish in confrontation, which is interesting because its stats are pretty high. It's only a challenge rating 5, right? But, it has armor class 16, 88 hit points, and some, +3 to strength, +2 to intelligence, +2 to wisdom. And it's immune to being frightened.
So I'm curious about this because this weirdly relates to what I'm going to bring up later after the break when I bring in my next monster.
Okay.
Challenge rating 5 seems, pretty doable, right? And I think that the average DM who's going to be stockpiling an encounter sees that challenge rating. And if you're just doing the raw math, it's like, this isn't really going to hurt the party that much. But now we got to start thinking about that thing you said. It advances when it has an opportunity and then retreats in fear. And what does it do again?
So when they're sleeping, it looks for sleeping people and it feeds on their nightmares. It has an ability called Nightmare Fuel, where you can use it once a day, and the Feyr targets one unconscious creature it can see within 10 feet of itself. The target must succeed on a DC 13 wisdom saving throw or take 5d10 psychic damage, and the Feyr gains temporary hit points equal to the damage dealt.
Oh my God. So this thing just grows.
It could double its hit points before the combat even starts and possibly kill you before the combat starts.
Okay. So this is brilliant, right? And if we're talking about lore and storytelling, I love this because this thing could potentially attack and retreat before it's ever seen.
If you fail the wisdom saving throw, it could possibly attack you, feed off of you, double its hit points, and disappear until the next night when you have to sleep again.
Now, refresh my memory, and as a DM, I should know this. Temporary hit points, we can continue to build upon those, right? Or does it have one slot of temporary hit points? It goes up. Garrett?
Just one slot.
Okay.
Temporary hit points are overridden. So
it can't keep
you can't
feeding.
you can't pile on top.
Yeah, you can't keep piling on top.
Right.
So whatever, if I guess he were to use that attack again or whatever, and if that was larger than the temporary hit points it would override them.
Okay.
But it doesn't
stack.
Doesn't stack.
Doesn't stack. Gotcha. But still, especially in a high level party where this thing comes out, makes the attack and grows and then disappears. Oh my God.
And let me tell you, like it's completely balanced, right? Because if you throw it at your party, it has invisibility. So before it attacks, it is invisible. Or before it uses nightmare fuel, it is invisible. If it plays smart, it could really mess up your party. But if your party is smart about it, they should deal with it, pretty handily. And I think that's the sign of a good character design or a good creature design. Yeah, for sure. And I really feel like the DM can take advantage of this very squishy, challenge rating 5 creature. How many hit points does this thing have? 88.
8. Oh, well, that's actually kind of substantial. What's the armor class?
16. So,
okay. So this is a substantial creature. And I think it's designed that way probably because the intention is to bolster itself and then get into combat.
And when it gets into combat, it's also not a chump either because it has a multi-attack. So it does a bite attack and a tentacle attack. The bite attack does 1d10 plus 3, but they have to, each creature within 10 feet of the fear must succeed on a 13 wisdom saving throw if they saw the attack, or be frightened until the end of the fear's next turn.
Gotcha.
So if the party's bunched up together, everybody has to make a fear roll.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Because if you fail on a fear roll, you're basically dropping what you've got and moving away.
You're running away. Yeah.
You're running away. So,
and then on top of that, it has its tentacle attack that does, it also not only does psychic damage, 46 plus 3, but it also attempts to grapple them if it hits them.
This is where fear, and I love this from the DM standpoint, because I think a lot of people overlook fear as a mechanic. And what's great about it is this, is if everybody in the party has to roll on a fear saving throw or on a saving throw or otherwise be, hit with fear, and half the party succeeds or one person succeeds, they're left standing there alone with that adversary. Mm-hmm. And that is a way to seriously change the odds of how that combat encounter is going to turn out.
For sure. And everybody attacks at disadvantage, even if they want to throw an attack back as they're running away.
Right.
Right. And let's say with this, right, let's say they fail their fear saving throw and then they're grappled by the tentacle attack, meaning they're just in combat range of this thing while afraid. So they're attacking at disadvantage. And they're grappled. Yeah.
So this thing's pretty powerful. Now, of course, it also states, if I'm not mistaken, in the description of that, this thing is as at home in space as it is in a dungeon. Mm-hmm. So you can bring this into any campaign, really.
It basically lurks in darkness.
Gotcha.
It is that thing in the shadow that you think you could see, but it's invisible, so you can't.
Nice. You know what I don't like about this podcast today? Is as the DM of your campaign, I'm getting a lot of ideas that I feel like I cannot use now because they're on the table.
Please use them. I am not a metagamer and I don't know the weaknesses because I don't read that stuff.
So Garret, before we go to break, what do you got for our first half?
So I had a hard time picking just one. There were so many things because I'm not a DM here. I'm always a player. And I don't look into, we discussed this before the podcast, I don't look into all these creatures and stuff like that. So actually looking at some of the stat blocks of Tiamat and, the Tarask and Orcus, some of these things are blowing my mind. And we discussed this before the podcast. And that's why we talked about these arena battles. I want to see these things in action because we're not going to play a campaign that we come across Orcus. I don't believe.
Give me time.
Okay, fine. Throw it.
Let them cook.
But I think the one that I kind of gravitated toward, and I wanted to pick. And it's funny because Rich, you and I were talking about Baldur's Gate 3 before this, but the Mind Flayer Lich is, I think, what I'm going to pick is just interesting. I mean, we've all, maybe not all, but we've encountered liches, Mind Flayers. You put it together. This thing is a powerhouse of spell casting abilities and just undeath. It's insane. Mm-hmm. It has 9th level power word kill. It's, it does. This comes from Volo's Guide to Monsters, and it doesn't have a fancy little description like you two had. So apologize for that.
Unprofessional.
But it has an armor class of 17. Yeah, not super high. It is innately a spellcaster, and it's only 135 hit points, but it has a lot of legendary actions. It, like I said, it has 9th level spellcasting. I mean, one of the really cool ones that I thought was Extract Brain, plus 12 to hit. One incapacitated humanoid grappled by the Lich. It hits for 55 piercing damage. If this damage reduces the target to 0 hit points, the Lich kills the target by extracting and devouring its brain.
That is busted.
Well, I think any situation that completely eliminates the death saving throws and says you're dead is terrifying.
I also hate that you just said that because that was one of my creatures too.
I know. We were looking at that one creature and it's same aspect essentially. But it has a paralyzing touch. I mean, it's DC 18 Constitution saving throw or be paralyzed for a minute. What else does it do?
Well, the spell save DC on this thing is 20.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you're not saving on most of what happens here.
Especially if you're a martial class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's labeled as an 18th level spellcaster. So yeah, what Todd just said, DC, it has a DC of 20 on its spells. Now, Todd, because I'm not DM here, I was trying to figure this out. How do the legendary actions work? Do you get so many a turn?
Yes.
Or?
So the legendary actions typically work from a standpoint of you would be able to use one of each of those per turn, and they reset every. Not per turn, per round. So legendary actions usually are able to be used up in a round and reset. If there's a change to that, it will tell you in the description. So legendary actions for the Mind Flayer Lich. The Lich gains the following legendary action options, which replace all of the Lich's legendary actions. That's weird.
So what I couldn't figure out is like, I couldn't find anywhere on the stat block how many legendary actions they get, because one of them costs 3 actions. One of them costs 2 actions.
So they could do it on their turn. It's not limited, but it uses the amount of actions they have on their turn.
Yeah, but I couldn't find anywhere in the stat block how many actions they had. That's why I was asking Todd if he knew that.
On this particular creature, I don't, but I'm quickly looking. So let me just see if I can find something for you. But let's keep talking about him and I'll see what I can come up with.
So I mean, it's got pretty much its damage immunities: poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. That's pretty standard. I mean, I didn't label it. It was a challenge rating of 22.
Damn.
Pretty high level monster here. It has a tentacle attack, again, plus 12 to hit. 5 foot, 1 creature. It does 3d10 plus 5 psychic damage. If the target is large or smaller, it is grappled. That was part of the, I guess it needs to be grappled to use the extract brain weapon. Yeah.
Now, where would you find this creature? I know they wouldn't be with other mind flayers because liches are kind of solitary creatures, no?
So maybe this is like a splinter.
So my basic ruling on this is typically legendary actions are limited to 3 per turn. Okay. And then they reset every round, which is what I think that's what I was stumbling over trying to say.
I think you're right.
Since there are no other parameters here for, dictating exceptions to that rule, I'm going to say that every turn, this creature has 3 legendary actions, right? Okay. And so when you get down to this stat block down here and it says Mind Blast costs 3 actions, that's going to take up all 3 of your legendary actions for that turn.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right.
Okay.
So that makes sense. Yeah. I think you're right on that. I think they do get 3
usually
per
3
round.
That's nuts. I thought it was just like per battle.
No, that's resistances. That's legendary resistances, and that is labeled 3 per day. But yeah, no, I think Todd's right. Is they get, unless it's otherwise stated, like because some dragons might have more.
Correct. Or there might be certain restrictions placed on legendary actions depending on the situation. I'm trying to think of one right now, and I know they're out there. Well,
like the fire breath or something from a dragon, like you have to see if it recharges.
Well, that's a regular action though, right? Okay. So yeah, but you're kind of on the right track, but that's not really a legendary action.
Yeah. So you're talking about recharges. The Mind Blast recharges on a 5 or 6, like a breath weapon. But if you use the legendary action Mind Blast, it recharges it and then you use it.
And before we go to the break, I just want to throw something out there for the DMs and GMs out there, is that legendary actions are a great way to take an ordinary monster and create an extraordinary situation with it. So give it your own legendary action. Now, obviously, don't make it something that's going to completely destroy your party, but give it something creative that lends itself to the narrative and say, I got 2 legendary actions stacked with this typical, goblin who happens to be a boss in a situation. And, boom, give them legendary actions. Give them 2 or 3 and let it run.
That'd be sick.
Right?
So maybe Todd has it. He was looking up the legendary actions. Maybe he has an answer to where would you find, if you were a DM, where would you put this?
The Mind Flayer Lich.
Because you probably wouldn't see it on a Nautiloid.
Well, okay. So first of all, is that a Baldur's Gate comment?
Yes.
It's just a Spelljammer comment. The Mind Flayers, that's their ship, the Nautiloid.
Right. I'm going to say that, first of all, let's remember how a lich is formed, especially one this powerful. Typically, there is a group of some kind of spellcaster wizards that sort of decide they're going to create this lich for whatever reason. And so the first thing they have to do is reduce the creature, in this case, the Mind Flayer, to 0 hit points, extract its soul, and then capture that soul in some kind of phylactery, like a gemstone or something that functions as the phylactery. And then once they decide what they're going to put that soul into, hopefully in this case, another Mind Flayer or the original Mind Flayer, they put the soul back in, right? So this requires a great effort. So I'm going to say that if this lich exists, he's probably in some kind of ancient temple or someplace where these wizards would have been set to work in the first place. I don't think you're just going to find a lich randomly hanging out in someone's attic, although it's possible, right? And we've been down this road before.
We were talking about
random lich encounters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be funny to kind of see a lich on the road who's like, listen, I know I'm that guy, right? But that guy needs to eat sometimes. And I love this restaurant.
Yeah, he's going to get that famous apple pie down at the restaurant.
That's right.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah,
that's right.
It really gets my creative juices flowing, All
right. So on that note, I think we got to go. We got to take a break right now. But listen, when we come back from the break, we're going to do 3-sentence backstory. And then we're going to get into some lower challenge rating and potentially other monsters that we can talk about in a different capacity. So we'll see you guys in a few minutes. Hello, esteemed listeners. Listen, if you like what we're doing here on iCast Guidance, we have a brand new way that you could possibly say thanks for doing what it is that we do. And don't get us wrong, we love to do this, and we come together every week. We're spending all of our week trying to think about how we're going to present to you a new topic. We're doing the research, and frankly, we love it. We love getting together to talk about this stuff. But we thought we should put into play some kind of system where if you wanted to pop in and buy us a cup of coffee because you like listening to the show, that we gave you a way to do that. So we are now on coffee.com, and coffee is spelled ko-fi.com/Wither and Bloom Studios. You can head over to that site and you could leave us a tip, or you could even sign up for a monthly membership if you want to. And by doing this, you say to us that you really love what we're up to and you hope that we keep going. And frankly, when we get those tips, we feel supported. We feel like, oh yeah, cool. This is, we're getting some affirmation here. That's great. So anyway, consider heading over there and doing that. And if you can't afford to, that's okay. Tell a friend about the podcast, spread the word about us, and get other people to listen to us. We would appreciate that as well. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and let's get back to the show. All right, we're back from the break. And as usual, on the break, we had some really good conversations about some stuff that's coming up on our YouTube show. So first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be in February. We're introducing live on the other Tuesday nights. So this would be second and fourth Tuesday nights. We're going to be doing live arena battles, and they're going to be amazing. So basically the gist of that is our players come to the table knowing that they have a certain challenge rating they have to meet. They can bring a player, a character with them. They'll bring a mini with them, and we're actually going to have some terrain set up, cameras on that, and you're going to see this battle unfold. I, of course, will allow them access to a limited number of things they can take into the arena with them, and then they take on whatever it is I throw at them. So stay tuned for that. That's coming. You're going to see that on the YouTube channel in our scheduled live streams soon. Anyway, we got to do 3-sentence backstory. Yeah,
let's do it.
All right. I'm going to start today because I think you all know where I'm going to go with this one, right? I am from the back of a massive sea turtle in the middle of the ocean. The sea turtle is often mistaken as an island. And so while I was born there, I wasn't there very long.
Major life event that happened in my past. Our island was overtaken by a ship of pirates.
Nice. And what put you on the road to adventure, Rich?
Must have been a small island and a small population if they were overtaken by a singular ship of pirates. So
We had a small village.
I think I escaped as they were, killing and pillaging as pirates do. And I vowed to become an even more fearsome pirate and come back and kill them.
Oh, pirate on pirate action.
Well, pirate on pirate action.
Mm-hmm.
Pirate on pirate action. Kind of reminds me of this song. I think it's called The Mariner's Tale, and it's by the Decemberists. And it's about this pirate and this whale. It's amazing. It's this epic story. Anyway, listen to it if you can. All right, so we're back from the break, and we are going to now introduce some other monsters that we're going to talk about. Something that's a little less large scale, I think. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Who wants to
Sure.
start us off? Who's got something?
I do.
Oh, Rich
Hit
is
it,
jumping
Rich.
in there.
Hit it, Rich. Give us something.
I'm coming out swinging with a fun one called the Murder Comet.
The Murder Comet.
The Murder Comet. Let me get to the page real quick. I am currently
He's
flipping.
not prepared.
Shall I read the description?
Please read the description.
Well, the page just flipped on me. Give me 1 second. I'm professional. Okay, I am ready. Evil spellcasters create murder comets by combining the essence of earth elementals with that of fire elementals. A murder comet looks like a screaming stone head wreathed in flame. It trails fire behind it as it flies through wild space, either singly or in a posse with other murder comets, looking for ships, crews, and other unsuspecting targets to destroy.
So wait, there's just a group of flying, flaming heads.
There's a group of murder comets.
Yes. It's so funny. A murder comet's creator can bind its spirit to the murder comet as well.
Well, that's exactly what I'd do if I created a murder comet. My God.
So you create an ageless, immortal version of yourself that flies through wild space, looking to bash its head into people.
Whoa, this is how I want to go out. This is how I want to die.
Honestly, I could see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are the stats on this thing? Give us some stats.
So armor class 19, hit points 66, challenge rating 5.
Wait a minute. Armor class of 19. Is this because it has insanely high dexterity?
No, the dex is 15.
That seems high for a challenge rating 5.
I think because it's so fast.
Okay.
Its flying speed is 120.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're using
So
that as kind of
It's kind of dexterity based.
It's
Dodgy.
immune to fire and poison. It when it drops to 0 hit points, it explodes like a suicide bomber. In a 20-foot sphere, you have to make a DC 16 dexterity saving throw or take 8d6 fire damage.
Wow. I love this.
So it's a fireball.
It doesn't provoke opportunity attacks when it flies by. And it has multi-attack.
That's because it goes by so fast you don't have time to react or you die.
It's kind of nuts. It's so fun, dude. You got to just ready for it when it comes by,
The murder comet.
So question,
Yeah.
if it explodes when it's reduced to 0. So like you said, could you create it as a suicide bomber? Like if its hit points are low, could you choose to,
Oh, yeah.
slam into the ground next to a party and just blow up?
You really could. Yeah.
Right? Why not? I mean, that's what a comet would do, right?
I think
Slam.
if you had a posse of them too, you use 3 of them as suicide bombers.
Yeah, I love that. And this is not a sponsored plug I'm about to make, but when you think about Keith Ammon's book, The Monsters Know What They're Doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's what you just said, Garrett. It's like this thing would know that it's nearing the end of its life.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in for the final kill here.
And if the leader of the posse, the one that's reflected after its creator, it does have its intelligence, its wisdom, its charisma stats of the creator.
Oh,
So it would know to do that.
It absolutely
It would
would
be,
know to do
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
I love
like
it.
this idea.
That's a good one.
Moving on.
Garrett, you got one or you want me to
Moving
go?
on, I had kind of two.
Two.
I mean, we'll see if we get to the second one. The first one, this came by looking at some of the strongest, highest level creatures out there. And, we're going to label the Tarask as one of the highest, hit point, most difficult, fearsome, whatever you want to label it. But it's also said that the Tarask can be beat by some easier things, or, if you're flying,
Yeah.
you can just fly around and launch a couple arrows at the Tarask, you're going to be able to beat them. But one thing that I thought was awesome that I found online was a challenge rating level 9 clay golem can single-handedly take on a Tarask. Which I thought was insane. I
Okay.
mean, a clay golem is
Do tell.
I mean, in its own aspect, a clay golem is, a foe that wouldn't be that easy to take down. Sculpted from clay, this bulky golem stands head and shoulders taller than most human-sized creatures. It's human-shaped, but its proportions are off. And, clay golems, large construct, only an armor class of 14, hit points 133, but they're strong as hell. And their damage immunities, this is where, the cheese comes in with the Tarask. Damage immunities: acid, poison, psychic, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine.
Oh, man.
So essentially nothing can hit it. Like, that's not.
So Tarask can barely hurt this thing.
So Tarask can barely hurt this thing. The Tarask's main objective is to try to swallow you. That's its main. It's going to beat the shit out of you with claw attacks or whatever. But the main thing is to bite and swallow its opponents. So if you bite and swallow a clay golem, it has acid absorption. So whenever the golem is subject to acid damage, it takes no damage and instead regains a number of hit points equal to the acid damage dealt. So it's essentially healing itself while it's in the Tarask's stomach. Because the Tarask stomach, if you look at the Tarask, So if you look at the Tarask stat block, it has an acid damage attack when the, player or foe would get into its stomach. So essentially the clay golem will heal itself while it's attacking from the inside. So then it can just, go berserk and multi-attack and slam the Tarask from the inside out. Essentially.
So funny.
My God.
So the internet said that it would take something like, let me find the little note.
Like an hour.
It was something like, I think like an hour or something, 50 to 60 minutes in game. But eventually the clay golem will be victorious and there's nothing a Tarask can do to stop it.
Can it throw it up?
I mean, I guess, maybe the Tarask has an option to throw it up. I didn't read the full stat block of the Tarask. There's a whole swallow. I think it can throw it up if it takes a certain amount of damage. Just quickly looking at the Tarask. But I think this would be fun to try.
So funny.
If we just have like, a couple hours to waste or something like that, it's like one of us plays the Tarask, one of us plays the clay golem and see, okay, let's pit the challenge level 30 Tarask against the challenge level 9 clay golem.
So you're playing the clay golem, you roll high in the initiative order. And I'm like, what do you want to do? And you're like, I hurl myself into the Tarask's mouth. It's like first move.
I shut my mouth
I'm
and
just
turn
gonna, away. Isn't this out of Men in Black? Where he just stands there and he's like, eat me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Eats me.
Yeah.
All right. So that's, go on, Todd.
I like it. So for mine, and again, as the GM, I'm like, I kind of am building this into my world right now. Do I really want to bring this up for you guys? But I'm going to bring it up. I love Slotty. Slaadi. Slotty is plural for slod. And slods, you've got slods of a variety of different shapes, sizes, and colors. So you have the, so first of all, right out of the gate, you've got the slod tadpole, right? Which is the recently birthed slod. You've got red slod, you've got blue slod, you've got green slod, gray slod, and death slod. And these are all different stages of life with the slod. Now, these are like toad-like amphibious creatures, and they are from, first of all, they're completely chaotic. They're from the plane of limbo, and they act in total chaos. So their movements are really about creating chaos, and they're unpredictable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the way in which they reproduce is absolutely terrifying. So their goal when they get into combat with you is to merely scratch you. And once they scratch you once, they don't care if they kill you. They're going to scratch you, and then they're moving on to the next player. It's not like I'm going to keep using claw attacks until you're dead. It's like if I get one hit on you, I have scratched you. And then they have, hold on a minute, I want to find the exact description here because it's really amazing. Yeah, so Slotty have a horrific cycle of reproduction. Slotty reproduce either by implanting humanoid hosts with eggs or by infecting them with a transformative disease called chaos phage. Each color of slot reproduces or transforms in a different way, with red Slotty spawning blue and green Slotty and blue Slotty spawning red and green. Each green slot undergoes a lifelong cycle of transformation into the more powerful gray and death slot. So what happens here is they get that infection into you and it begins to grow. Now, here's the part I love. When a red slot claws a humanoid creature, it can inject an egg from a gland under one of its claws. The egg works its way into its host and gestates, eventually forming a slod tadpole. Such a tadpole then eats its way out of the host's body, feeds on the host's remains, and then seeks any other fresh meat it can find. The tadpole transforms into a fully grown blue slod or green slod if the host had the ability to cast third level spells or higher. Now,
Are you kidding me?
yes, but get this. A humanoid host can only carry one slot egg to term at a time. Over 3 months, the egg moves to the chest cavity, gestates, and forms a slod tadpole. In the 24-hour period before giving birth, the host starts to feel unwell. Its speed is halved, and it has disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. At birth, the tadpole chews its way through the vital organs and out of the host's chest in one round, killing the host. Killing the host in the process.
This is incredible.
So can you imagine the fucking chaos that you could sow on a party with one simple trail encounter where they take 3 points of damage from a claw attack and have no idea that in 3 months they're dead?
All right, Rich, you said you're not going to metagame.
Yeah.
I'm totally fucking metagaming.
Hey, I want an x-ray on my stomach every fucking day.
Oh, yeah. Because in medieval Emberfeld, x-rays are abundant and
Yes.
really readily available. The only thing is your healthcare provider will probably decline your ability to get said x-ray.
True. Unless they're
All
murdered.
right, this is like straight out of
Alien. It's Alien.
Is there a save or anything to save you after? How do you not die?
Yeah, there is a save. There's a Constitution saving throw that you have to make if you are humanoid, and
Okay.
that DC is 14.
And that's just right when you get scratched?
Yeah. Anytime
this is
you
disgusting.
so any claw attack, if you get hit, you have to make the Constitution saving throw.
This is
So
disgusting.
as long if it even gets in you once,
Yep.
in 3 months you're dead, there's nothing to do about it?
No, you can be cured,
Okay.
but you have to know it's there.
That's awesome. I want to see them in the campaign.
You have to know it's there.
That's crazy.
Why would you want that?
You can do a whole campaign with that, dude. There's so much to do with those creatures.
Well, okay, so let's go back to Alien for a second, because this is where the story could get really intense. Imagine if you had said encounter and your party members had no idea. I mean, can you imagine, first of all, 3 months of campaign time is going to take us a year to get through.
yeah.
So you guys are going to completely forget you even had this slotty encounter, right? And you're sitting around the campfire one night. You're cooking the possum that you just shot. And I don't know, maybe you're not eating possum. You're
Remy's chest cavity just fucking.
And all of a
Why
sudden-
does it have to be Remy?
I don't
Why
know.
did you pick Remy?
I don't know.
Well, because somebody starts to feel unwell,
Papillons.
right? And you're like, wow, I don't feel so good. I'm kind of sluggish. I feel pain in my chest. And nobody knows. And I, as a DM, I have a timer running. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, you guys all watch as Remy lurches forward, clutching her chest in pain. And then she wrenches back and lands across the log that she was laying on. And all of a sudden, this huge mound of pressure rises up right near her sternum as her chest pushed forward, and this thing shoots from her chest. And you see this tiny slod tadpole with like this amphibious face. And he's kind of like, yeah. And he like takes off into the woods.
Use that voice.
Hell yeah.
Dude, that's nightmare fuel.
Or better yet, you're on watch. The rest of your party's asleep. And that thing emerges from one of your sleeping party members.
Oh, yeah. Just
starts to eat it.
Yeah, that would kind of be kind of humane because then your party member dies without realizing they're dying.
Can you imagine the amount of devastation that would hit the party if you revealed that the reason they died was a fight that happened on the road a year ago that they never thought about again?
Can you imagine? Okay, wait. Let's go back one more thing here. The DM records in a notebook the order in which the party got infected. So let's say high on the initiative list, it's you, Tryphon, because you're playing Tryphon. You're the first one to take the scratch. Wouldn't it be poetic if you were the first one for the gestation to take place?
Devastating.
Then everyone else starts to think, fuck, what's going on here? What's happening? Somebody rolls a really, really good perception check or a really, really good medicine check and realizes, holy shit, that's a slod tadpole. Do you remember 3 months ago when we got attacked? We must all be infected. And now the timer begins to tick.
Oh my God, what do? Kill each other so you don't... Wait, that might be the move.
Well, it does say that if the disease is cured before the tadpole's emergence, the unborn slod is disintegrated.
Okay, all right.
So it
not murder.
is possible.
That's nuts, dude.
Wow.
Lots of chaos.
So that's my monster. That's my monster. What else you got, Garret?
No, one of the other ones that I was going to bring up, and it is super basic, but the shadow. Looking at it, it's a challenge rating half. But it is, this is kind of going on with the nightmare fuel stuff. And I love to plug that book that you had.
Yeah, the monsters know what they're doing.
Yeah, the monster knows what they're doing. So the shadow, it has, natural abilities to hide in darkness and stuff. So that book was talking about how this monster would know exactly what it was doing. It would hide and wait for you to come by. And what I loved about it was its main action, the thing that it does is it drains you of your strength. It's a melee attack, +4 to hit, one creature. It does 2d6 +2 necrotic damage, and the target's strength score is reduced by 1d4. The target dies if this reduces its strength to 0.
Again, eliminating the death save.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's just sitting there creeping in the shadows. It's a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how many players strength is their dump stat. Most of my characters, it has been. So it's going to prey on those weak looking characters.
Nobody thinks about strength like that.
A couple little saps of its strength, that player's going to die.
It's nuts, dude.
I thought it was, I liked it. I like this simple, it's got a ton of different resistances. It doesn't have a ton of hit points. 16. It has resistance to piercing and slashing from non-magical attacks, bludgeoning. So it's not the easiest. It is vulnerable to radiant damage, though.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the way to kill it.
Right.
But I thought it was just so cool.
And obviously so, right? A shadow, radiant damage. Yeah. I think as we, especially GMs and GMs, is we're kind of trying to put together encounters and we're thinking about things like challenge ratings and we're thinking about how monsters would move. I find that a lot of DMs and GMs are sort of always upping the ante on either the number of foes that are entering a situation or the challenge rating of foes that are entering a situation in order to kind of strike fear into the party. It's like, how do you create the party's sort of urgency? Say, hey, you guys could be in a lot of trouble here. That's kind of what you want to do in combat. You want to give the party some fear. And so I think a lot of low challenge rating monsters get overlooked because DMs don't fully understand how to make that function. Mm-hmm. And I know we've talked about this book a couple of times, and I had no intention of bringing this book up on the air, which is The Monsters Know What They're Doing by Keith Ammon. And he's got several of these books out. But he says something, and I actually always kind of knew this. You guys know that I love goblins. Mm-hmm. I fucking love goblins. And the reason I love them, and most DMs are just like, God, goblins, 7 hit points. What the hell are you going to do with that? Unless you introduce 100 of them. But you don't need to introduce 100 of them because they have one thing baked into their description that you don't even think about, but it's one of their most powerful things. And it's simple. They have the bonus action of being able to either disengage or hide. Now, this is huge for them. It's called nimble escape. It's a trait that they have. So the goblin can take disengage or hide as a bonus action on each of its turns. So simple. You want goblins to be powerful? Keith Ammon goes into this in the book. All right, listen to this. This is what he says. This is from The Monsters Know What They're Doing. A typical goblin combat turn goes short bow, action, move, hide, bonus action. And because they attack from hiding, they roll with advantage. Regardless of whether or they hit or miss, the attack gives their position away. So they change it immediately because they can. So imagine 8 goblins on a fairly experienced party, all hiding in the trees and the woods around the road. They fire an arrow, they immediately hide.
I remember you almost killed Brandmore with this.
I did
this to us.
I've done this to you multiple times.
The beginning of our recent campaign was loaded with goblins, small packs of goblins.
Small packs of goblins can be freaking terrifying if you know how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always necessarily about gigantic hit points, high armor class, big challenge ratings, legendary actions. Yeah. You don't need them.
I think I was pitted against, I was alone. I made, steps away from the party in the middle of the night. Dumbass, but whatever. I think there were 3 or 4 goblins.
There were 3 goblins.
And it pretty much wiped me out.
And at the time you took on 3 goblins, you were level 3?
2 or 3.
Right.
It might have been level 3.
So 3 goblins should be no problem. 3 challenge ratings of...
Because they kept hiding. I couldn't see them. And then I'm just shooting into the air, really.
You couldn't see.
I couldn't see them, so I was trying to hit them. I get a lucky hit on them, but 3 goblins pretty much almost took me out.
Rich, you got one more for us before we go?
Yeah, I do. Mr. flipping through his pages.
Is it loud?
All that noise you guys are hearing on the podcast, that's Rich looking through his book. Which
is it loud?
It's there. I don't care. But what I love about this, and Garrett, you and I were talking about this earlier. I'm like on D&D Beyond and you're in the Monster Manual, and then I'm on the Monster Manual and you're in D&D Beyond, and we both agreed. And this is not a snub in any direction. I love my physical books.
Yeah,
I love them.
Yeah,
so much better.
Looking through that Monster Manual, just flipping the pages.
Yep,
just felt good.
Yep, that's why as soon as I saw the Daggerheart materials and packs, I was like, "Yep, buying that."
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to bring us in with probably my favorite monster. It's the most terrifying. I think it's an innate fear we all have as people. And I think you can use it in a campaign so convincingly. That's going to be the doppelgangers.
Yeah.
Just we all know what doppelgangers are. They are a challenge rating 3 squishy creature that can 1, read your mind, and then 2, transform into any creature that it either saw in your mind or any creature it's seen before. And the things you can do with this are basically unlimited. If you have a really smart doppelganger plotting against your party, maybe looking for revenge against your party, they can absolutely decimate your party if they're done right.
Right. Have you used these before?
I have. I was running my players through a maze.
Ooh.
And they were separated in the maze. And I had the doppelgangers appear as the other players.
Oh, that's messed up. I would love to see what that book says about doppelgangers.
Yeah.
I know Todd's got it in his hand over there, but.
So here I goes. They have shape changer. The doppelganger can use its action to polymorph into a small or medium humanoid it has seen, or back into its true form. Ambusher. In the first round of combat, the doppelganger has advantage on attack rolls against any creature it surprised, and then surprise attack. If the doppelganger surprises a creature and hits it with an attack during the first round of combat, it's an extra 3d6 damage. It has multi-attack, so it does a 2 melee attacks, 2 slam attacks, and then it has read thoughts. So you could just be in a crowded place, and the doppelganger can magically read the surface thoughts of one creature within 60 feet of it. The effect can penetrate barriers, but 3 feet of wood or dirt, 2 feet of stone, 2 inches of metal, or a thin sheet of lead blocks it. While it's in range, the doppelganger can continue to read its thoughts if it stays in range.
Well, one of the things that Keith Ammon in this book says is that the key is this: the doppelganger does not want to fight if it can help it. As long as it can advance its interests without fighting, relying solely on misdirection, that's what it will do.
Mm.
And if it does have to fight, it certainly doesn't want its opponent to be the one who starts the fight. It attacks when the opponent has no reason at all to expect it. So again, I think this is a much more psychologically based monster to throw into your game, like you're describing, Rich, which, this is not, I think this is the thing we got to remember is oftentimes monsters are not just about combat. They can do so much more for the game.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Maybe like the doppelganger follows the party and it sees that it got a quest from someone. And then maybe it murders that person and takes his form. So he knows the party's going to come back to them and ambushes them or something. Like there's so much you could do with it. And it's so creepy.
This happens in Mistborn. I was going to go into Mistborn, but it does happen in Mistborn. We don't have to go down the Mistborn road, but it does.
Spoilers.
Interesting.
Spoiler alert.
Rich is still working on that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yes.
I moved on.
So, all right. Well, listen, you guys, I think it's about time we got to wrap this up. But this has been a good conversation, and we are going to revisit this conversation when the 2024 Monster Manual comes out. I have pre-ordered my alt cover. Looking forward to that coming, but we're going to do this again with the new monsters that are specifically in that only. So look forward.
Fun.
I can do this again for another hour. I love this.
Oh yeah, totally. I love talking about this stuff. It also gives me ideas for how to kill you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, listen, we want to thank you for listening. And if you get a chance, head on over to YouTube where you can find Wither and Bloom Studios at YouTube and find this podcast as well as some of our live streams, our long form video, our shorts, all the other stuff we do. We would love to have you along for the ride. So please definitely subscribe to that. Check out our live stream the first and third Tuesday of every month called Rising. It's our new Dungeons and Dragons campaign that we're playing, where we allow you, the audience member, to participate in the game, which I think is totally, well, maybe not totally unique, but kind of unique and also a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks you guys for this conversation. This was awesome.
This was fun.
This was a good time.
We'll see you guys next week. And don't worry, we will be on live next Sunday morning, sometime around 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to record next week's version of the podcast. Everybody, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to iCast Guidance. iCast Guidance is produced by Todd Lambrix, Garret Brennan, and Rich Frohman. We drop this podcast every week, and we are looking forward to having you hang out for more. Don't forget to head on over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, follow our channel, and definitely comment on what you see there. We will probably read those on this show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to next time.